Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where we break down commodities markets, sound money principles, and geopolitics, all with the goal of making you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day. Today is March 26th, 2026, and I'm thrilled to welcome Melody Wright to the program, an analyst in real estate, macro, and technology, and the publisher of the M3 Melody Substack. Melody believes the rapidly escalating war in the Middle East is the final nail in the coffin for the U.S. economy, as wartime spending ramps up and the political class openly engages in the brazen looting of the system in a desperate bid to get their hands on as much wealth and power as possible before it all collapses catastrophically. Melody unpacks why she thinks the U.S. could ultimately be planning to default on their debt, what that looks like for the rest of us, and how we might pick up the pieces as the dust settles. All of this and so much more ahead in my conversation with Melody Wright. Melody Wright, it is great to have you back on Commodity Culture. Now, last time I had you on the show, you said the consumer was dead and the economy in the US was far worse than most understand. Now that we're knee-deep in a kinetic war in the Middle East that is estimated to be costing approximately $900 million a day, with the administration requesting an additional $200 billion to keep the war going, does this accelerate the economic decline in America?
I think so. There's obviously, as we need more weapons and things like that, there will be companies that do better than others. But for the irregular consumer, the only thing that was giving them any latitude at all was gas prices. And now, it seems crazy to most people that 25 cents, 50 cents, a dollar can make more a gallon can make such a huge difference, but it does because there is just no wiggle room. And so, what I remember 22 very well, like we had to give people gas cards just to get them to work because they couldn't afford it. And so, in the United States, we drive a lot. We don't have a lot of public transportation. And so, like this is a big deal. This just kind of puts the nail in the coffin. And there's, and we're continuing to see layoffs. And so there's nothing really coming at this, in the near term for to change this picture. So yeah, it accelerates it. It makes it worse. And I think, we're starting to see kind of, everything sort of fall apart at the same time. So I'm not laughing at that situation, but it's kind of unreal to watch, in real time.
Absolutely. And we are also hearing a lot of talk about the potential for a global recession, largely driven by the kind of soft closure of the Strait of Hormuz. They're letting certain vessels through if they agree to pay a toll. Supposedly, they want to accept renminbi. I've heard also that they also accept USDT. But nonetheless, there's a fee for ships to pass through. And of course, those connected to America or Israel, it could be a whole different situation. Energy infrastructure also being destroyed. I saw Eric Nuttall, who runs a prominent energy fund, on X saying this is the biggest energy crisis of his lifetime that could be facing us down. What are your thoughts there on just the overall impact on the global economy and how bad things could really get as a result of this war?
Yeah, we kind of live in a globally synchronized economy, and I think that as one suffers, others suffer as well. And I think the current view right now is that the U.S. is going to be fine because we have access, to oil. But the problem is, like jet fuel, comes from China for the most part. Also, I don't think people have a good understanding of how we refine things here, but we get things from other places. And then we've already seen several refineries in the United States get hit in small explosions, or like we're not hearing, Jesse, so we're in the fog of war right now. And I think that, people are holding on to these false hopes, and our administration is fueling that because they can't really afford anything else. But, we cannot put it past a state actor to take out one of our, a large part of our supply. So yeah, this is this situation is crazy. And I think it's spiraling. And I think, yeah, it's going to impact the world. I mean, we're just now hearing that 500 gas stations in Australia have run out of gas. You're seeing it in the Philippines. California is already saying, sending out warnings. So I think we're going to see some issues here. But yeah, this is going to hurt the world economy. To your point, that with that infrastructure being hit, it's not about just opening the strait. And the oil is in everything, as you well know, Jesse. I mean, it's just in everything. And so, like people's face moisturizers, like, in making the contacts that I have on right now. And so I just think people don't even understand. I think Dow Chemical came out yesterday and said they were doubling the price of plastic, and that we use plastic to package everything. So, this is, although my long-term thesis is deflation, like short-term, we are going to see some inflation or at least increased, cost of goods.
Well, talk to us
which is not good for the economy. Go ahead.
Yeah. Talk to us about that long-term deflation. What do you think will bring us there? Is this going to be a darker scenario, such as a deflationary bust? Or will it just be better prices for everybody? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, the cure for high prices is high prices. We can all talk crazy monetary theory and all this blah, blah, blah. But in reality, that's just the truth. And so I think you're going to see kind of a deflationary bust. And I think that, it's just getting started. It hasn't really started in earnest. Speaking of the housing market in particular, there are record cancellations again in February. I mean, people are getting to the closing table and realizing they can't close. They can't, either the property inspection came back with a problem they don't want to deal with, or the insurance was too much, or, they just can't qualify because of what's going on. So yeah, I think that we are just coming on to the top of the roller coaster. And, rents had just started to come down, but that's just going to continue and continue because nobody can afford, housing right now. And especially and now gas and especially with layoffs, like this is just getting uglier and uglier fast.
I want to turn to the private credit market because we've seen an increase in funds capping investor withdrawals. This cannot be a good sign. Break that down for us and the potential implications of a crash of the private credit market for the broader economy.
Yeah, so now we go to the top of the K. Like you and I were just primarily talking about the bottom of the K, but the top of the K, they're the people that are invested in these things. And when they're told they can't get their money out, that changes their math. Just like it changes someone's math when their house sits for sale for a year. Things just, you start. And so then your spending starts to change, and so, yeah, but breaking this down, essentially, I mean, I did some diving into Blue Owl and just the things that these people are invested in. I mean, they give loans out to everybody, Jesse, and I don't think they did any due diligence. I mean, not really. And so, and we don't know what's in all this stuff. We don't know how these companies are doing, but they're not doing very well. And you can see the contagion spreading. You can see Apollo also gating, Cliffwater. This one, I think we're going to hear a lot about. This is the one that just got a rating agency downgrade. And more importantly, I should say, is what Chase did when they wrote down some loans. That is a huge, like megaphone to the market. Like, this is a big deal. And it honestly, it's like step one of a credit crisis. And, I think that you're going to, and then, and immediately when it happened, I said, the rating agencies are about to start acting because, they don't independently find this stuff. They wait till it's too much trouble. And so, and sure enough, they did. They started doing some downgrades. So this could be massive contagion and become, kind of a Lehman style event.
The sponsor of today's episode is ARC Silver Gold Osmium. Owner Ian Everard is praised even by his competitors as one of the most honest and level-headed bullion dealers in the United States. They have some great prices. You can see some of them displayed right now on screen. Take advantage of these specials today by reaching out to Ian at 307 264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com. Make sure to tell him, of course, that Commodity Culture sent you. And now, back to the interview. Let's talk about the housing market. You alluded to it earlier. You recently posted some data on your X from Danielle DiMartino Booth's Daily Feather, noting that the top 20% of income earners accounted for around 57% of U.S. real estate wealth as of the third quarter of 2025. This is a pretty shocking statistic. Walk us through how it impacts the real estate market.
I think you've been seeing it impact it, right? Like the housing market has been frozen for the last 3 years, just frozen. The only transactions have been those, higher priced homes, which is what kept that median price up. And so our top 20% has been carrying everything, but it gets to a point where it just doesn't make sense. Like they've got all the homes they need. Plus when you're staring down, let's say they do have like 5 homes and they're looking, especially if they're investors, all of a sudden their rents prices are going down and, property taxes going up, insurance is going up, electricity bills are going up, replacement costs are going up. This just math doesn't make any sense anymore. And so, the housing market, sputtered along at lower than almost 2008 levels based on this top 20% transacting, but they're pulling back as well. And it's, it's not going to sustain, these 20% can't sustain the whole housing market. But to our previous conversation about the top of the K getting impacted, just think about that. If they own 57% of the assets, and some of them, not all of them, but a section of them are getting crushed, what happens? Those real estate assets come to market, and that is going to happen.
Well, you release a lot of data on the real estate market on your Substack as well as on X. What are the most important trends you're seeing that you think more people should be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, I think those cancellations are a big deal. I think if you want to know where sentiment is, just watch the mortgage rate and, what has just happened with all of this war is we had gotten below 5 for like 30 seconds. I mean, not 5, below 6% for like 30 seconds. And then now we're up to about 6.5 yesterday. So, watch that. That's going to tell you a lot about sentiment. And because the sellers also realize that rates aren't coming down. And so that's why many of them pulled back last year. But honestly, at this juncture, it's really going to be about watching those home prices, believe it or not. And Jesse, for the first time ever in my series, I track 85 markets. We have 45 of my cities are year over year negative, compared to 17 last year this time. So you are seeing it spread. So, just pay attention to kind of what's going on in your local market and your home prices. That'll tell you where we are. But yeah, before this, I would say pay attention to all kinds of things but we're really to the point now where, look at those mortgage rates for sentiment and pay attention to what prices are doing in your market.
Do you think the silver lining to that is that homes could become affordable once again? Is that something that people could perhaps look forward to in terms of potentially taking advantage of these lower prices up ahead? Or do you believe just the broader damage that's going to occur to the economy in general is going to give people that much less purchasing power that it won't really matter?
It's going to be both. But, this is why I've been talking to people for 3 years, get ready for this, pay down your debt. Save your money. I'm not an idiot and think that not buying Starbucks every day is going to get you a down payment in a year, but it's a mortgage payment almost. So just save your money, earn what you can on it, and because you can still get interest on that money, and just wait. But, the people that are going to be crushed, Jesse, unfortunately, are the people that are over levered and they got into debt and they, believe the hype and spent on credit cards and buy now, pay later to do vacations and experiences that, they're probably going to wish they hadn't done, because there is going to be, in my opinion, a real opportunity here in the future for people with a steady work, steady income, low debt to be able to afford homes again.
I want to turn to government corruption and perhaps one of the most blatant examples of insider trading by the political class. We saw 6 million barrels of Brent and WTI oil sold minutes before Trump posted on Truth Social that there were some very productive talks happening with Iran. Now, that is a claim since denied by the Iranian regime. So at the most cynical way you could look at this is he was literally making it up to make money for himself and a circle of insiders. Now, that wouldn't surprise anyone. I think it feels like law and order is being thrown out the window, both at home domestically as well as internationally. I don't think there'll be an official investigation. Is this just another example of the 1% siphoning their wealth at the expense from others? And what are your thoughts on this, the potential of this insider trade? And will we see more of it up ahead?
Yeah, I think this is just business as usual. I think we're more sophisticated now at our ability to see it when it's happening. You know, I think about 9/11 all the time, right? That was a very impactful event in my life, and somebody traded off of it and did well. And that was what, 25 years ago, Jesse? So I'm not expecting any law and order here. And yeah, I think what we're witnessing in many ways is kind of the last gasp of this system, and people are just they're taking anything that's not nailed down. They're taking profits. You've got insider selling everywhere. Like, you know, in many ways, I think about how April of last year was kind of it was your warning, and a lot of people didn't want to take it. But basically, it was a warning, and we've had almost a year to act. And instead, a lot of people put their head in the sand. More retail got in, which I think is always part of the plan to some degree, because it's exit liquidity. But yeah, it's disgusting. I don't know what else to say, but this is life in hyper financialization, and everybody's just taking what they can. And I think these things matter. And I think that ultimately there's going to be a price to pay. But, right now, it just seems like we're just witnessing, looting. It's just looting of the system.
And you referred to the last gasp of this system. Is that the fiat currency system? Is that simply the hyper-financialization of everything? And what is there on the other side of this? Is a collapse of some sort coming that we will need to rebuild from? Does the entire political structure, the system, the way it works now, need to be torn down and rebuilt? How do you see things advancing here? And what does that last gasp look like?
Yeah, so you want me to earn my title, Queen of Doom, I guess. So I ask people, to pay attention to what's actually happening versus what everybody's saying. And so I think right now everybody's got whiplash because they actually believe these headlines. These headlines are ridiculous. This is a psyop. This is what happens in war. But watch what is happening. And when you watch what is happening, Jesse, when you watch us let infrastructure get hit, then it seems to me like we are taking a wrecking ball to our current world order, and that includes fiat. And honestly, if I just look at the facts, and I came to this conclusion last week, Jesse, this is a very new one for me, and I haven't shared with hardly anybody, and so you'll be my first show to do it. But I think this might be, we're on the road to actually defaulting on our debt. And, bring back gold as the world currency. Think of Wright. We just got a headline, Turkey, its gold reserves, they've spent more out of them. I think it's a record, because this is what's going to, people are going to be grasping for anything. And if you're, why would you invest in long-term U.S. treasuries when we're acting like this? I think I just also saw another headline. And again, things are changing so quickly, you can't even keep up, that we're going to take some funds that other nations put together for Ukraine. We're going to take it and replenish our weaponry. It's like, who wants to play with that bully? And so I think they know it. And so it's not necessarily that, oh, BRICS is going to take over or this or that, but I think we know we have come to some sort of conclusion that this debt is not sustainable. And because every action that's being taken right now makes no sense. Not if you care about international law, not if you care about order. So I do think that perhaps, they might have wanted to get there a different way, but this is how we may get there.
And what are your thoughts to the theory that the reason the U.S. is acting this way is to protect their status as the global hegemon? I've spoken to a few people and also heard some analysis that actually this is really about China and stopping the flow of oil for renminbi to China, reducing the ability for China to get access to cheap oil to then prevent them from becoming the next global superpower. And also to prevent a multipolar world from emerging, that the U.S. is essentially like a cornered animal that is about to lose its hegemony, and it's fighting desperately to maintain it. What do you think about that?
I think that's one layer of the narrative. I think we're being fed about 15 layers right now. So whatever layer you're at, it's going to be there too. And I think the very top, one of the topper layers is this China narrative. I mean, if Iran's saying you can have some oil, like, they could also partner with Russia, although, we've hit Ukraine has hit some oil infrastructure in Russia, but I'm pretty sure, honestly, I think it's going to happen to us as well. I just don't believe that. I think that this isn't how you do it. I think though that blaming them as the bad guy, they are collapsing demographically, collapsing. And anybody who's spent time over there, I don't think that you walk away saying they're going to take over the world. And I don't want to get into all that, but, I've been there. I lived in Taiwan. Like, we have a very big misunderstanding of Asia. And I think that's on purpose. So, yeah, I think that's one of the narratives. But Jesse, I don't think that's what's going on. Like, and if that was, I think the timeline would be different. I think we would have waited a little bit longer. This feels very different. So this is my opinion. And just to give you some background, and I know we're probably running out of time, but I studied propaganda in school. I had a Russian minor. I studied Soviet propaganda, and then I moved on to studying U.S. propaganda during Vietnam. And I think you learn how to watch where the convergence points of the narratives to then create a full picture of what's happening, not what they're saying, but where are the narratives converging? And so this is what I've been on the lookout for weeks, because my brain was blown. Like, this just didn't make any sense. But I've kind of arrived at a place where I think this is more about our debt than probably pretty much anything else. So, but we shall see, and I could be wrong, and something could happen tomorrow. And, but we are certainly here in the United States being dissuaded from traveling, I canceled a trip last week. I wasn't about to go sit in an airport for 6 hours and then maybe miss my flight or whatever. And at the same time, we're being told about a homeland plot, in the United States. And so people are scared for that reason. So for whatever reason, it looks like we're about to get, locked down again. It's just in some form or another. And I know that sounds like conspiracy theory, but they're already talking about reducing driving and things like this. And so if we're fine, why are they talking about that?
Because there has been some of those rumors, reports circulating online that energy lockdowns are going to be the next thing. And like you mentioned, in Australia, they're running out of diesel. Obviously, a lot of those countries that rely heavily on the Middle East for their oil and oil-based products are going through it. Pakistan, Philippines, etc. So certainly precarious times. I do want to quickly just jump into the point on China for a moment. You've spent time there. You said you spent time in Taiwan. I lived in China for about a year and a half in like 2007, 2008. I was in my 20s just having a good time. I didn't know anything about the global economy or what was going on. So my experience notwithstanding, we hear different narratives. On the one extreme, what you're saying, the demographics they're going through major challenges there. Obviously, they had massive issues in their real estate market. And, those on the farthest side of that spectrum would say they're on the verge of collapse. Your Peter Zihans who come out and say China won't even be relevant in 5 years. And then on the other side, you have people who give the exact opposite view of China's the next global superpower. In fact, Brian Berletich, I believe his name is, he said that's one of the guys who was proposing this theory, this war is all about stopping China. He says in 5 years, in 10 years max, could be 5 years, China will become the indisputable global superpower of the world, and it's irreversible. And that's what this war is about. So I wonder where you sit in that spectrum with your experience with the region.
I think probably in the middle. I don't believe what Zehan said, and and I think now that everybody's more familiar with him in general, he has he's kind of, I think he plays a role, a certain role, as a narrative catcher, I should say. He catches the dissidents. But on the other hand, I'm actually curious about what you think, because I spending time there can't even imagine. And I remember coming back because I was there in 2005, so not too long before you, and thinking we've got this all wrong. But what's really happened, Jesse, is we've turned more like China during that time than anything else. And I think that's the reason I'm in the middle, is that so much of our business, so much of our technology, all of this, China's everywhere in the United States. And in many ways, we've just become more like them. So I don't know. I think that might be more part of their strategy than, this dominance and war and things like that. So I'm probably in the middle, but what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that obviously we see a lot of hype online with these mega cities. It's like Blade Runner, everything's so advanced. Was it the CEO of Ford who came back from China and said, we can't outcompete these people. The cars they're building are so amazing. They have an incredible EV range, the BYD cars. And I've heard that they're very far ahead in certain areas of robotics. So when it comes to certain industrial aspects, China certainly has an edge in some case, but they have many problems as well. They're a massive country with a massive population, with many different interests, all kind of combating each other. And it's not the rosy picture that's painted on social media, but at the same time, it's not, I was there, it was relatively free. You can't criticize the government. It's not a free democracy or a place where you're allowed to have your own say. There's also a heavy hand of the state. It's like kind of a state/capitalist, state-controlled capitalist system, which makes it interesting. A lot of the EV cars there were driven by government intervention, government grants, this sort of thing. So it's such a murky picture to really peel back and uncover that I'm also very uncertain as to where all of this is headed. But in terms of it becoming the next global superpower, anything's possible, particularly if they've been building up their military as much as people are saying. If it does come to a hot war, we'd have to see how things could be contested in the region. If they do attempt to take back Taiwan, whether that's through diplomatic means, whether that's through subversion or through a direct kinetic war or invasion, that could change the picture as well. But I'm pretty in the dark on this one. All of that to say, I'm not really sure. But I want to move on now to gold getting hit, because you spoke about gold potentially making a comeback. A lot of people I spoke on the show in terms of being in the monetary system, a lot of people on this show also believe that. Why has gold been falling so much since the war started, in your view? Do you think this is people scrambling for liquidity? Is this a sell everything moment? What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's a sell everything. And plus we know there was a ton of speculation in gold. When it just started rising, you got to know everybody went in there and did some sort of speculation. So I think everybody that's really in gold knew to be cautious because it had gotten a little crazy and all the wrong people were getting involved. And so I think that's what this is. It's a sell everything. That's it, in my opinion. And I got to be honest, in all my years thinking about macro, I never even thought this was a possibility. It has taken this to really change my mind because it's like you just sit and you think and nothing else makes sense why we would do this. And so, yeah, I feel like we're changing world order and we want to, maybe we want to go to this multipolar world where our interests do come first, but to get there, but I think that there's always going to be a part of, in its current form, our administration that's going to be interested in what's going on around the world and will probably, participate in other ways. But I do think we're breaking the system is what it feels like to me.
Now, last time you were on the show, we also discussed the AI bubble and the potential implications of it bursting. Year to date, the big three indices are all down a few percentage points. Could we be witnessing the beginning of the end for the Magnificent Seven, the tech-driven mega caps? And could this war perhaps be the trigger that brings us into a real bear market?
Yeah, I think that there has been a pinprick in the bubble since DeepSeek, right? And I think that you've had a lot of people that know better getting out and talking. And, all these data centers are coming to a halt. And I think that's a part of the narrative that kept everything going was when Trump came in on a cloud after winning and getting all this investment from the Middle East. Well, that's gone. So everybody's going to be having to take care of their own for, the foreseeable future. And I think, with Sam Altman coming out and saying no porn, thank God. I mean, and actually, and I haven't had time to think about this, Jesse, because it just happened. They just announced that Sora was closing, which is really one of the first products that got people interested. And so, the metaverse, all the they're hanging up. So I think that, we're watching the transformation of the AI bubble starting to collapse. And I think, people are going to cycle into energy and military and defense. And this is, and I do think I just saw somebody tell me, and this is an anecdote, is that they're seeing where they're a trader, people paying penalties and cashing out their 401ks early. I just think, the AI bubble has been held up by narrative for almost really 3 years. And it's slowly leaking. And I do think we'll probably get some violent movement. And, this war with Iran is perfect cover to let that happen, right? Take out a few people, take them off the stage, put them in jail like Sam Bankman-Fried, and let it collapse and then let it be what it's going to be. Because, my biggest thing with AI, Jesse, is not that I don't think that there's potential in the technology. It's that we lack a will to actually implement it. That's what I saw when I was in fintech. Companies no longer had that kind of perseverance because it takes a lot of work to implement. And the ones that don't do it right, you end up now calling and you're in, chatbot hell. People are going to walk away from that. And so I think we're in the correction period. And we probably will get a more violent drawdown, but the bubble, I think, leaking is continuing, and then we'll finally burst.
And when the dust settles, for value investors and those with that perspective, a massive correction could be a time when generational wealth could potentially be made. Where would you be looking? Which areas of the market do you think would present an opportunity in such a scenario?
So I think wherever we're going to really rebuild our economy, that is. And so if we're going to be, if this conflict persists, that's probably going to be something around defense. But, I think in general, we need to address our energy infrastructure in the United States. And so around that kind of thing. But honestly, Jesse, I think with what's happening right now, the future is very uncertain. And it feels like radical changes. And so at this point, I think it's just time to hunker down And then as this plays out, we'll start to get clues about where that opportunity. So I like to say, because I love military acronyms and phrases, but I like to say, stay frosty, because this is the time to stay frosty for those types of things I'm thinking about, Jesse. I'm thinking about buying a machine shop because, I think all these electric cars, people hate them. The software breaks before the car breaks. It's so annoying. And so I think like things like that, people are going to be wanting to just keep their car and get it fixed. But the biggest issue are parts. And so I think in physical things like that, and actual cash generating businesses where you make stuff, or you're electrician or things like that, then because I think robotics are going to be a big deal, and we need people that understand the interface between hardware and software, and there's so few of those people. And then we're just going to need people to help fix some of the robots, when they break, because they'll break. So, just cash generating businesses, in my opinion, like where you're really providing a service to your community still. I know that probably sounds incredibly naive, but that's what I've been thinking about.
What about extractive industries, commodities producers? You mentioned energy. Any other commodities, gold, silver producers, uranium, base metals such as copper? Is any of that on your radar?
It is, but I got to be honest, Jesse, I don't trust our government right now. I don't trust anything. And I don't like these guys right now, because we are in the looting phase. I don't trust anything, because are they just trying to take the last bit of my money is what I'm thinking. And so I kind of need to see where we are before I even think about those things. But yeah, they would be, on my list of potential things to think about. Sorry, this is a crazy time. So I know the picture is not clear.
Yeah, well, you've provided an excellent analysis today. Tell us about the M3 Melody Substack and anywhere else you'd like to direct people online.
Sure. Yeah. So the Substack is where I write about kind of what's going on in macro land, and how that relates to the housing market. And something that's just part of what I do is I always bring in the micro, because I think you need both of those things to really understand what's going on. So I publish there about 3 times a month, sometimes more. And M3 Melody Substack. And even the free version, I tell people this all the time, I pack a lot of data in there, because to me, this is about educating. It's not about making my millions. So, I just encourage people to check it out. It's got a lot of info, and it tells the story of what's going on.
Great. I'll put a link in the description below to your Substack, as well as your X account, where you post a lot of valuable information as well. Thank you so much, Melody, for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me, Jesse, and apologies for my doom.
Thank you for joining us today. Our sponsor, ARC Silver Gold Osmium, has some great prices on precious metals, bullion products. They are on your screen right now. These are subject to change, and well supplies last, so reach out to owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you, and represent sound money in style with the official Stack Silver, not Fiat t-shirt, available in the Commodity Culture shop using the link in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.